in the hushed, dusty air of a high-ceilinged conservatory in Paris. The year is 1863. The golden afternoon light filters through tall windows, illuminating motes of dust that dance around a grand piano made of polished ebony and ivory. Inside this room, the atmosphere is thick with tension, a silent battle of wills between a young student and the old guard of European musical tradition. A young woman sits at the keyboard, her fingers hovering with a nervous energy that betrays her youth. She has traveled across an ocean, leaving behind the warmth of the Caribbean and the chaos of the American Civil War to be here, in this temple of art. She is Teresa Carreño, a name that will one day echo through concert halls across the globe. But in this moment, she is just a girl of 10 desperate for approval facing a man who holds the power to make or break her career. The teacher, a distinguished maestro of the old school, sits with his arms crossed, his face a mask of stern judgment. As she begins to play, the notes of a Chopin etude fill the room, but they are not the delicate, refined sounds he expects. They are bold, aggressive, thunderous with a force that seems too large for her small frame. Suddenly, the teacher's hand slams onto the piano, silencing the music in a jarring discord. He looks at her not with admiration, but with a sneer of dismissal. "You play like a savage," he says, his voice dripping with condescension. "You have no finesse, no grace. You attack the instrument as if it were your enemy. You will never be a true pianist, mademoiselle. You are merely a curiosity." The words hang in the air, heavy and cruel, mocking not just her skills, but her very nature. But as the teacher laughs a cold, dismissive sound that seeks to crush her spirit, he has no idea that the girl sitting before him possesses a talent so immense, so revolutionary, that it will one day stun the world and leave the very institution he represents in awe. To understand the magnitude of this moment and the incredible talent that lay hidden beneath the surface of that criticized performance, we must travel back in time across the map to a world vastly different from the rainy streets of Paris. Teresa Carreño was born on a quiet December day in 1853 in Caracas, Venezuela. She came into the world at a time when her country was navigating the turbulent waters of political upheaval, a place where the sound of revolution often mingled with the music of the streets. Her father, Manuel Antonio Carreño, was a man of immense standing as statesman, a writer and a musician, and her mother was a woman of deep culture and refinement. From the moment she could crawl, the piano was the center of her universe. It was not merely an instrument. It was a magnet that drew her in. Legend has it that before she could even speak in full sentences, she would reach up to the keys, plucking out melodies she had heard her father play, her tiny fingers finding the notes with an eerie precision. By the age of 3, she was not just tapping, she was playing. By the age of 5, she had composed her first waltz, a simple yet haunting piece that hinted at the genius fermenting within her soul. This was not the normal progression of a child learning a skill. This was the awakening of a prodigy, a force of nature that defied explanation. Life in Caracas, however, was about to take a drastic turn. The political winds shifted, and her father, finding himself on the wrong side of a shifting government, was forced into exile. The Carreño family packed their lives into trunks and fled, leaving behind the warmth of the tropics for the bustling, cold energy of New York City. It was 1862, and the United States was tearing itself apart in the Civil War. Amidst the chaos of a nation at war, the family settled into a small apartment, and the piano became their anchor. In this new world, Teresa's father took on the role of her primary teacher, but his methods were rigorous, bordering on tyrannical. He saw the raw talent in his daughter and was determined to forge it into steel. Hours turned into days, and days into years of relentless practice. Scales, arpeggios, exercises designed to strengthen the fingers and discipline the mind became her daily bread. While other children played in the streets of New York, Teresa was locked in a room with the metronome ticking away her childhood. This intense regimen, born of love and ambition, forged a technique of incredible power and flexibility, but it also instilled in her a fiery temperament, a refusal to be tamed by the rules. This was the background she carried with her when she eventually arrived in Europe, the reason why her playing was so different, so wild, so misunderstood by the traditionalists. Her debut in New York had been a sensation. At the age of 8, she walked onto the stage of Irving Hall, a tiny figure in a white dress with a cascade of dark curls falling down her back. The audience, expecting a cute novelty, a child performing tricks, was instead struck dumb by the maturity and force of her playing. She didn't just play the notes. She attacked them with a fervor that sent shockwaves through the crowd. The critics called her a grand pianist and a musical genius. She was invited to play for the President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, in the White House. Imagine the scene: the tall, weary president, burdened by the weight of a nation at war, sitting in the Red Room with this little girl. She played for him, perhaps a piece by Chopin or one of her own compositions, and for a brief moment, the war outside the walls ceased to exist. Lincoln was moved to tears, or so the story goes, captivated by the spirit of this young soul. This was the beginning of her legend, but the road to true artistic acceptance lay in Europe, the heartland of classical music. It was there that she sought the validation of the masters, and it was there that she encountered the teacher who would seek to dim her light. The journey to Paris was a pilgrimage. Teresa, now a teenager, carried with her the hopes of her family and the expectations of those who had heard her play in America. She was a prodigy, yes, but she was also a woman in a man's world, and a Latin American at that, entering the sanctified halls of the Paris Conservatory where tradition was king. She came to study with the great pianist and composer, Georges Mathias, a man who had studied with Frédéric Chopin himself. Mathias was the gatekeeper of the Chopin tradition, a style defined by elegance, subtlety, and a fluid singing tone. He was a man of refined tastes, and when Teresa first played for him, her style, a product of her rigorous training and her own passionate nature, must have seemed alien to him. She played with a thunderous dynamic range, digging into the keys to extract a volume that was considered unladylike at the time. Her phrasing was dramatic, her tempo flexible to the point of recklessness. In the eyes of the traditionalist, she lacked the restraint, the je ne sais quoi of the French salon. The teacher's mockery was not just about her technical ability. It was a rejection of her artistic identity. He told her she played like a savage, a word loaded with prejudice and arrogance. He tried to mold her, to force her hands into the shape of a proper lady pianist, stripping away the power that made her unique. For a young woman desperate to learn, this rejection was devastating. It planted seeds of doubt in her mind. Was she too wild? Did she lack true talent? Was she just a loud showman? The teacher's words echoed in her mind every time she touched the keys, a haunting reminder that she did not belong. But history is rarely written by those who follow the rules blindly. It is written by those who break them. The turning point for Teresa Carreño did not come from pleasing her teacher, but from finding her own voice within the chaos of her doubt. She realized that the power the teacher mocked was actually her greatest strength. She was not a delicate salon pianist. She was a force of nature. She decided to embrace the very things the teacher had criticized. Instead of softening her touch, she refined her power. She learned to control the thunder, to harness the energy of her savage attack, and channel it into a controlled explosion of sound. She began to compose her own music, works that required the strength and endurance she had developed, pieces that defied the delicate expectations of the era. It was during this time of self-discovery that she was introduced to the great Franz Liszt, the only other pianist of the time who truly understood the piano as an orchestra, a weapon of expression. Liszt, the old lion of the piano, heard her play. Where the Parisian teacher had heard noise, Liszt heard the future. He didn't just compliment her. He embraced her. He invited her to his home, to his inner circle. He listened to her play and with a knowing smile, recognized the kinship between them. He saw that she possessed the same ability to transfix an audience, to transcend the mechanics of the instrument and touch the sublime. Liszt's approval was the antidote to her teacher's poison. He didn't ask her to be quieter or more refined. He told her to play louder, to be bolder, to set the world on fire. Armed with this validation, Teresa Carreño stepped onto the world stage with a newfound confidence. The girl who had been mocked in the dusty conservatory was gone, replaced by a woman who commanded the piano like a general commands an army. Her talent was not just about technique. It was about presence. When she sat at the piano, she was a conductor, a sorceress, a Valkyrie. She toured Europe, playing in the great capitals London, Vienna, Berlin, Berlin. Everywhere she went, the reviews began to change. No longer was she the savage or the novelty. She was described as the Valkyrie of the piano, a title that acknowledged both her immense power and the thrilling danger of her performances. Audiences were stunned by her. They came expecting a spectacle and left having experienced a revelation. She played the standard repertoire, Beethoven, Chopin, Schumann, but she infused it with a life force that was entirely her own. Her octaves were like cannons, her trills like birdsong, her phrasing like a human voice crying out in joy and sorrow. She stunned the critics who had initially dismissed her, converting them one by one with the sheer, undeniable force of her artistry. She showed them that a woman could possess strength without losing grace, that passion was not the enemy of technique, but its very soul. The teacher who had mocked her was forced to watch from the sidelines as his former student, the girl he had called a failure, rose to heights he could never have imagined. But Teresa's story was not just about conquering the concert halls of Europe. It was about breaking barriers in every corner of her life. She returned to the United States, not as the child prodigy of the Civil War era, but as a mature artist of international renown. She navigated the complexities of a life that was constantly in motion. She was a mother, she was a wife several times over, and she was a composer. She wrote a string quartet that was performed in Berlin to great acclaim, proving her musical mind extended far beyond the piano keys. She became a teacher herself, passing on her knowledge to the next generation, but she was never the kind of teacher who mocked. She knew the pain of that too well. Instead, she was a mentor who encouraged her students to find their own voices, to trust their instincts, and to play with courage. She lived through a century of immense change, witnessing the transition from the horse and carriage to the automobile, from the telegraph to the radio. Through it all, the piano remained her constant companion, the tool through which she spoke to the world. Even in her later years, when her hands began to slow and her hearing began to fade, the fire never went out. She would sit at the keyboard, and the moment her fingers touched the ivory, the years would fall away, and the fierce, passionate girl from Caracas would return, stunning everyone within earshot. The legacy of Teresa Carreño is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of prejudice and doubt. The teacher who mocked her piano skills represented a world that wanted to keep art in a box, to define it by narrow standards of what was proper or correct. He wanted a pianist to be a technician, a reproducer of notes, polite and obedient. But Teresa was an artist, a creator who saw the piano as a means of expressing the inexpressible. She stunned them all not because she proved the teacher wrong about her technique, but because she proved him wrong about what music could be. She showed that true talent cannot be suppressed by mockery or ridicule. It can only be delayed. Her journey from the dusty conservatory in Paris to the grand stages of the world is a cinematic arc of triumph, a story of a woman who refused to let the world dictate her limits. She played with a strength that defied her physical stature, a complexity that defied the prejudices of her gender, and a passion that defied the cynicism of her critics. As we look back at her life today, we see more than just a collection of historical facts and concert dates. We see a mirror reflecting our own struggles for recognition and respect. We see the countless individuals who have been told they are not good enough, not talented enough, not the right fit. Teresa Carreño's story whispers to them that the mockery of the gatekeepers is not the final verdict. It is merely noise, a distraction to be overcome. Her incredible talent stunned them all, yes, but the true marvel is that she preserved her talent through the darkness. She took the cruelty of a teacher as sneer and transformed it into the fuel that powered her greatness. The piano was her weapon, and she wielded it with a brilliance that continues to shine long after the voices of her doubters have faded into silence. The keys of the piano, black and white, became the palette upon which she painted her rebellion, a rebellion of beauty against ugliness, of hope against despair. In the final analysis, the story of Teresa Carreño is not just about a pianist. It is about the power of authenticity. It is about the courage to play one's own music, even when the world demands a different tune. The teacher mocked her skills because he did not understand the vision behind them. He saw a girl hitting the keys too hard. History saw a woman striking a blow for artistic freedom. When she played, she didn't just strike strings. She struck chords in the hearts of her listeners, resonating with a truth that transcends time. She stunned them, not just with her velocity or her volume, but with the raw, unfiltered honesty of her expression. And as the final notes of her life's work echoed into history, she left behind a legacy that continues to inspire. She taught us that talent is not a fixed point, but a flame that must be protected, nurtured, and sometimes fought for with every ounce of one's being. The teacher who mocked her is long forgotten, a footnote in the biography of a giant. But Teresa Carreño, the Valkyrie of the piano, remains immortal, her name etched in the annals of history, her music still capable of stunning the world, one listener at a time. Her incredible talent didn't just stun them all. It silenced the doubt forever, proving to the world and to herself that the only validation an artist truly needs is the courage to play their own truth.